Okay, this video is about draw filing. Now, in a previous video I talked about cross filing. Cross filing is good when I was making this small part here, and what cross filing is used for is to reduce the material. Now, once we've reduced the material, we will probably be left with scratches. Now, it's quite hard to see the scratches on this orange material, but they are there. So if we look at this piece of black material, this has just been cut with a saw. Okay, as you can see, those marks are left there. Also, if I'd have cross-filed this with the file, it would have left those marks in that stage as well. So what we need to do is get rid of those marks and get it to a stage where it's almost perfectly shiny, a little bit like the top surface of this, and it'll be ready for then buffing. So I'm going to start as before by placing this low down in the vise to prevent any movement, and also to stop that the noise generated by the friction. Now, there are two sort of general methods for starting this sort of process that are known. Okay, some schools often use a ruler like this. Now, what they do with the ruler is they hold it at a slight angle to the work in two hands like this, and just drag it lightly back a few times like this. Now, what this does is it scrapes off a very thin layer. If we can just see that a bit closer, you can see those scratches are starting to disappear. Okay, now this is a method I don't particularly like. It does work, but I think you don't have a great deal of control by using this technique. Now, the draw filing technique uses the file that we used before, okay, but instead of with the cross filing technique where we was holding it in this manner, holding it like this and working across the work, what we're going to do is hold it in two hands like this and then lightly work backwards and forwards across the work like this. Now, literally, I'm only using more or less the weight of the file. I'm not trying to push down hard on this material. I'm just lightly taking out those scratches. Now, if we can just have one more little look at the piece now, you will see there are scratches, and there's light scratches going in line with the work. Now, when it's at this stage, you know it's kind of ready. Now, you might think that this is quite, it's made the surface worse, but if we use a cloth, something, or like your apron, to wipe this off, you can see that I'm left with an almost perfect surface. Now, I've got a couple of little scratches here and here, and all I need to do is just repeat this process a bit longer until they completely go. So I'm just going to work a little bit more, and what I should be doing is checking this very carefully, visually, using my eyes obviously, to make sure that those scratches are completely gone. Now, when I'm certain those scratches are gone, again, I can use my apron or a cloth to wipe this off, and that surface is now ready for the next stage. Now, the next stage, we're going to use this type of paper here, okay? Now, this is aluminium oxide paper, but it's commonly known as wet and dry. We often call it wet and dry paper, and that's because it can be used wet or dry. Now, if I'm using a non-porous material, that's a material that won't take water, it won't absorb water, I can use it wet. If I was using this on a porous material like wood, okay, I would only use it dry, because otherwise that water would soak into the wood and probably damage the surface. Now, what we need to know about the different types of abrasive papers, this aluminium oxide paper is called P1200. Now, the number indicates how rough or how smooth the paper is. The higher the number means the smoother the paper. So this P1200 is a very smooth paper. If we look at this, which is a very abrasive grit, a sandpaper or a glass paper as it's sometimes called, and we turn it over, we can see the number there is 80. It's a very low number, which indicates it's very rough. Okay, so we're going to use this smooth paper because we're only trying to take off a small amount of material. Now, what I'm going to do is dip this into the water. I don't need loads of water like this, and wrap it carefully around the file like that, and we're just going to work backwards and forwards on the surface. Now, you can move fairly quickly on this, it doesn't really matter, but what we're aiming to do is to remove those tiny scratches left by the draw filing process. Now, you might find, if you look carefully at the edge of the plastic there, you get this sort of coloured slurry appearing. Now, what this is a mixture of water and the acrylic powders that are generated when you start filing. Now, that is very good because that helps to smooth the surface even further. So we're going to work for a little while on this, just another sort of 10 seconds or something like that should be enough to get the finish that I'm looking for. So I'm just going to work like that. You can see more slurry is beginning to appear. That's all good. It's going to help to get that surface really, really smooth for us. And then when I think I've got a good finish, again, I'm just going to get a cloth on my apron and just wipe this surface off very carefully. Now, if we look at this, you can see that surface is very, very smooth now, okay? Now, I wouldn't normally say to rub the fingers across, but once it's at this stage, I can tell that's really smooth and there's no scratches, and that is ready to be buffed.